So let's begin the meeting. And I think probably most of you know me, except Jim. I'm Carol Reinke. I'm one of the co-presidents of the Edwardsville League. And we're very pleased to have Jim McGrath with us because he's an issue specialist for the League of Women Voters for gun violence prevention. And Jim, you became involved and active after the Sandy Hook.
That's right.
So, and have been involved in several different organizations about gun violence prevention. And my computer printer went crazy, so I can't really say what else you were involved with, but we're very pleased to have you.
So besides the league, I do a lot of work with Vote by Mail with an Indivisible group. I also do, with that same group, I do a monthly review of what's happening at school boards across the state and across the nation, actually, a lot of the protests. So let's get started. Let me share my screen here and we'll get started. Okay. So this should not be a surprise to any of you, I would think. That guns are now the leading cause of death for kids and teens 0 to 19 years old. This was posted by a group called Keep Kids Safe. So we'll start at the beginning, which is the Second Amendment. And this is all the Second Amendment says. It's pretty simple. It's a one sentence, well-regulated militia. And the reason that this was put in place, well, there's a lot of stories about it, but the primary reason was the founders did not want a standing army because they had seen standing armies being used against the citizens in countries that they had come from. But they knew they may need to put together a defense in case they were attacked. So they allowed people to buy and keep arms, and they would have to register with the government that they had a weapon, so that if the U.S. got attacked, the government knew who to call up. That's kind of the background for this whole thing. Now the issue is we've had a standing army for over 100 years, so this amendment is kind of outdated. But anyway, so there's nothing in this amendment that supports an individual right to carry a firearm. However, and this is what's happening with this, there's little steps just keep changing the landscape of some of our laws. So in 2008, there was a case in the District of Columbia where the Supreme Court decided that the Second Amendment, you could own a gun unconnected with service in a militia. And you could use that for traditionally lawful purposes, such as self-defenses within the home. Now keep that in mind, within the home. So what has happened with concealed carry? Again, it's kind of the water drip theory. They take little baby steps, and okay, you can have a gun, and now you can carry it, wherever you want to, and that kind of thing. So this just happened. I'll go through this quickly because it's already been decided. And the Supreme Court ruled against the New York State. They had a requirement if you want to do concealed carry, where you had to justify to a judge that you were you needed to have a weapon for self-defense wherever you were because you were in danger, whatever the excuse was. The Supreme Court said you can't do that. So our concern here in Illinois is that kind of opens the door for the gun lobby to come and try to void our FOID card, our firearms owner identification card. So there's a 6-3 decision, which you would have expected. Now I can make this presentation available to you guys because I've got a lot of links in here where you can follow up on a lot of the information. So in America, over 8 in 10 Americans perceive that gun violence is increasing around the country. And this is a study done by the AP in conjunction with the University of Chicago. Shows that bipartisan majority of Americans support background checks for all gun sales. All gun sales. They want a law preventing mentally ill people from purchasing guns. That's tough because that kind of interferes with the HIPAA laws that somebody would have to be recorded as being having a mental issue, with their FOID card. Allowing courts to temporarily prevent people who are considered dangerous from purchasing a gun. That's the background checks. Making 21 the minimum age to buy a gun nationwide. That is the case in Illinois. And banning guns from those who have been convicted of domestic violence, which is, violence against women is, and we'll talk about that before this presentation is over. I hear this a lot, talking to people around the state. The most recent one, obviously, is Highland Park. We don't have a gun problem. Well, it doesn't matter where you live. Guns are pervasive, and they're very portable. It's commonplace. This is a Highland Park resident. And what this person is saying, it's now becoming so pervasive, we don't even blink anymore. So until laws change, it's going to be more of the same. So that's what we have to focus on. Now, there are so many aspects to gun issues that we can't get them all done in one law. So we have to do these like one at a time, maybe 1 to 2 or 3 a year, but we can get it done. And this is a Highland Park resident saying there's no safe place anymore. Now, this next one is a young lady who was at the Highland Park parade, and she's just 18 years old. And she said she's not the first time she's been close to this. She was in Orlando when the Pulse nightclub shooting happened. She was in Las Vegas when that shooting happened. She was at the Highland Park parade, and she's saying, I'm going to show you some pictures. If you guys have a hard time seeing pictures of people who have been shot, you might want to turn away I'll warn you before I click on those pictures. But these are pictures that she posted, and she was getting these people saying she's a crisis actor, that the blood was fake, and she's saying it's the truth. It was real. So here's her picture. Okay, you can see the her wound is right up here. She is so lucky that this just grazed her. Had this been over to her left an inch or two, she wouldn't be with us today. But this is what it looks like. So luckily she is. But this woman, it's 18-year-old lady, is lucky. We can change the future of gun violence. It's an epidemic, but we have to be, and this uses the term misinformation. I like to change people from thinking about misinformation. Misinformation is a mistake. It's the wrong date, the wrong name, the wrong location, the wrong date, the wrong time. What the gun lobby does is disinformation. That is information that is incorrect in order to accomplish an end goal. So things like the gun lobby says more guns will make us safer. That's disinformation. Okay, Uvalde was the 212th mass shooting this year. I have some data a little bit later to show you how since May, how this has increased. Okay, the gun lobby disinformation campaign. Okay, the thing about gun-free zones, schools, for example, are gun-free zones, and they say, well, that's why shooters go into schools, because they know nobody has a gun there. That is not why they go in there. They're going in there because they want to show the school there's something that they don't like about the school. The person that wrote this article, and the link is down here at the bottom. Her daughter was murdered in the Aurora theater shooting, Aurora, Colorado theater shooting in 2012. So, you know, there's a lot of people that when they get involved, and they, you know, they sometimes it takes a tragedy like that to get somebody involved. Sometimes it's just hearing about it to get involved. That's what happened to me. I heard about it and I had to get involved. I had to do something. So there's a definition for mass shootings. That's when 4 or more people are shot and killed, not including the shooter. That's kind of an arbitrary definition, but mass shootings burden the healthcare system with incredible costs. They're estimating that the Las Vegas shooting was a cost of over $600 million when you calculate medical costs, mental health care, police work, lost labor, employees, quality of life, etc. One of the things that I think what we need to focus on with the gun lobby is, rather than trying to convince them that what we need to do is control guns to make people safer, they tend to be very conscious about how much money they're spending. They always want tax cuts. So if we can show them how we can save a lot of money, and I'll show you a little bit later what this actually costs the state. Here, gun violence costs Illinois over $10 billion a year. Almost $700 million is paid by taxpayers. So if we could cut down gun violence by half, we would automatically save $300 million or $300,000 or $300 million a year. That's huge, and I hope that would get their attention. So this is a cost. So let me back this up. So if Illinois is $10 billion and there's 50 states, it stands to reason that for the US, it's somewhere over $500 billion a year in cost to America. This is data put together by Everytown for Gun Safety. And it was published by NPR, the National Public Radio. They think it's a very conservative estimate because it doesn't take into account things like children's trauma and stuff like that. So this is a picture from the top shooting in Buffalo, New York. Hidden cost of firearms. So we'll spend a little bit more time on this. 40,000 people in the U.S. a year are killed by firearms. It's closer to 45,000, but that also includes suicides. Long-term hidden costs. What they did was they looked at people who were survivors, and a survivor bears a cost. They figured of somebody who's been shot, an average cost of about $2,500 more a month in healthcare spending. Now, how many of us could afford spending an extra $2,500 a month? Most of us would go broke quickly. So again, these are huge numbers that we could save if we can start getting a better handle on gun violence. This is a study that was done in DC. It says every time a trigger is pulled and a victim is shot dead, the city pays $1.5 million in response. That's just for the police, the ambulance, and all the support staff that the city has to provide. That's taxpayer dollars. So this is just an example of this. This is about a year-old slide where all the mass shootings have happened around the United States. So here, Illinois has some of the strictest gun laws in the country. And the Chicago Tribune just ran an article a week or so ago, basically agreeing to this, but saying what we need to do, like the gun lobby says, is a better job enforcing them. And that's probably true. Illinois does not restrict assault weapons. Our Constitution allows it to happen. So the Illinois courts have found that the citizens of Illinois have a right to assault weapons, but Illinois law prohibits anyone younger than 21 from purchasing and possessing a firearm. But here's an issue. With a compromise that was made several years ago, I think it was about 2017, that in order to get some of these laws passed, the legislature in Springfield agreed that municipalities could not restrict or ban assault rifles. Well, Highland Park has an assault weapons ban. The gun rights people took the Highland Park to court. Highland Park prevailed, and they prevailed because from the time that this concession was made, there was like municipalities had like 100 days to implement an assault weapons ban. Highland Park voted on it and got it done within that 100 days. But it was very close, and that was the basis of the lawsuit. So they tried to challenge it. Here's something else that happened in California. California has had a under 21 gun ban for years, but this judge in the Ninth Circuit of Appeals struck the law down. Semi-automatic weapons to sales to anyone under the age of 21, they said you can't do that. And here is the logic that he used, that in the Revolutionary War, if we didn't have 18 to 21-year-olds fighting with the right to have a gun, we would not have won the Revolutionary War. So I don't know how that logic connects to allowing someone under 21 to buy a semi-automatic weapon, but this is the logic that was used. And what the gun lobby is doing is challenging a lot of these laws, getting them to appeals court, and then if the appeals court turns them down, what they want to do is get it to the Supreme Court. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. What's an assault weapon? Show you some pictures of these in a little bit, but it's a semi-automatic firearm, magazine, pistol grip. I'll show you how they're converting AR-15s into pistols in a little bit. So we had an assault weapons ban that expired in, I think, 2004. In general, and there was a definition for assault weapons in that law. So this is the definition that was used at that time, but particularly for combat use. So this is what the gun manufacturing community is very creative and figure out ways to make their weapons more portable and more deadly. So this is an AR-15 style weapon here at the top. And so what they do is so here's the three parts of it, and they typically take these apart in order to clean them. So they can remove the barrel and they replace it with a short barrel. And then they can remove the stock and put this stabilizing brace on. And because it's now shorter, it's classified as a pistol. Okay, so classified as a pistol, it's still the same assault weapon. It's still firing the same deadly munition. America has more guns than any other country. We have to understand that the U.S. has more than 300 million guns, roughly more than one for every citizen, and the data is very scary. This number is probably is much closer to 400 million, because this slide is a couple years old. At the other extreme, Japan has less than one gun per 100 people, and typically fewer than 10 gun deaths per year in the entire country. So we have 45,000. They have less than 10. So I don't know if hopefully you can see this, but this is guns per 100 people. In the US, there's 120 guns for every 100 people. Japan has 0.3 guns per 100 people. So you can imagine that that equates to murders. The United States has 3.4 murders per 100,000 people. Japan has 0. England, Wales has 0. Spain, Germany, Australia, 0.1. So, when they say that guns don't kill people, people kill people, it's people with guns kill people. Okay, so we have a model for regulating guns. This was in the New York Times in May. And the model that they're using is automobiles. Gun enthusiasts say cars kill people, but we're not talking about banning cars. No, but we actually have a model for public health. And so this is what this writer is suggesting. We don't ban cars, but we work hard to regulate them. We put in seatbelts, we put in airbags, we put speed limits on. You have to have a driver's license. You can't drive drunk, etc. It's been very successful. So here's a chart showing. So this is deaths per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. So this is about 9 deaths per 100 million miles in 1947. So this is 47, and you can see how it's come down. So here we put the 55 mile an hour speed limit on. We required child safety seats, required seat belts back in 1950, but we're down to a little over one death per 100 million miles. So we can regulate, if we can regulate guns the way we know that they should be, we can actually get this under control. This is a great model, an example of how that can work. This site is awesome. They update this site every day. It's the gunviolencearchive.org. So I updated this afternoon. This is from today's data. So to date, there's been 32,000 gun deaths, homicides 14,000, suicides 17,000. Mass shootings, you saw earlier, I said it was like 296. As of today, it's 496. So you can go through this, and this is you can go check this out every day. This gun violence archive, it's open. Anybody can go to it. One of the notes that they make on this website is that suicides are always tallied separately, and they're always more than 50% of all gun deaths. So you can see over here in these, this is data for the whole US. So suicides are 54%, homicides are 46%, except when you come to Illinois. Illinois, the suicide rate is 39%, homicides are 58%. It's not because we have fewer suicides, it's because we have more homicides. This is the map that's on the website, and you can see these red dots indicating where gun deaths occur. One of the things that when we're working on gun legislation that we hear from a lot of the representatives is that we don't have a gun violence problem. Well, okay, so it's clustered in the Chicago area, clustered in the St. Louis area, but you can see throughout the state, some of this is Champaign, Peoria, up by Moline. Luckily none, right, but very south, down by you guys. But again, you can go to this website, Gun Violence Archive. This map is updated daily. So gun violence around the state, we'll go through this rather quickly. I was telling Rebecca before we started the meeting that I checked to make sure that I know what's going on in your community. And the good news is I could not find any gun violence issues in Edwardsville for this year. But Decatur has had a problem, Peoria, Rockford, Carbondale, Champaign, and the International Association of Chiefs of Police want something to be done about it. So we've got a lot of data that says we need to do something about it. We just need to do something about it. Suicide rates, you can see, so California, Illinois, Minnesota, we're on the low end. but you can see some of these others are not. So suicide, I attended a session a couple of years ago with a psychiatrist, and his comment was, what we have to make kids understand is that suicide is a long-term solution to a short-term problem. If you can identify the person that has a weapon or has a tendency that you're concerned about them, get them to see somebody. If they're in school, get them to see a counselor, get them help before they hurt themselves or somebody else. Suicide rates in kids are 4 times higher than kids who live in homes without guns. 40% of suicide committed by kids and teens involved guns. 9 out of 10 of these suicides were with guns that the victims accessed at their own home or from a relative's home. One of the things that we tried to get past this legislative session was a requirement for safe gun storage in the home. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but that bill got stuck in committee. There's a myth that gun suicide is not more lethal than other means. That is obviously very false. The number that I'm using here is 82.5% fatality rate. I've seen numbers closer to 90%. But the interesting thing here is 70% of suicide survivors never ever attempt suicide again. So we have to keep them from attempting suicide in the first place. And if you see somebody that needs help, here's a website, onethingtodo.org. And you know, we're just implementing the I forget what the number was at 988 for suicide prevention. So anybody want to guess what state had the most gun sales in 2021? It's us. Now this is just absolute numbers. So we had this is just the first half of 2021. I haven't been able to get any data more current than this. So we had over 6 million guns sold in just the first half of 2021. While we have only 4% of the US population, we had 27% of the gun sales in the US in that period. Second place was Kentucky. Now, Kentucky has a population that is about 1/3, maybe a little bit greater than 1/3 of Illinois. So when you look at this number, we're still on a per capita basis, still outpacing Kentucky in gun sales. So here's the website that I got it from. This is the Wall Street Journal. No state's seen more FBI background checks than Illinois. So we had the most background checks through October of 2021. We had over 7 million. Kentucky, 3 million. Texas, 1.6 million. Now, Texas has a population that is about 2 1/3 times bigger than Illinois. So my feeling here is that this data is a little skewed because they're probably not doing background checks every time a gun is sold, because there's a lot of guns sold in Texas, and then Indiana, Florida. Ghost guns. Ghost gun is something that is not registered, and it's a ghost gun because it's a gun made from a kit of purchased parts. You can either buy a kit, or you go online and you buy the parts separately. So it's totally untraceable. It's not serialized. It's not registered anywhere. Kids, felons, domestic abuser can purchase these kits online. It's still illegal for them to possess them, but nobody knows that they have it. So the ATF was reviewing ghost guns, trying to make a ruling for the entire US. The good news is we passed a ban on ghost guns, and JB has already signed it into law. So ghost guns are one of the fastest growing threats to safety in America. As I said before, they can be bought in kit form, no background checks. Kids can go online, but nobody's checking to see how old these kids are. if they're mentally stable, if their parents told them it's okay, whatever. So this is a myth that the ATF and federal government is doing all they can to regulate ghost guns. The fact is, the federal government is saying this is up to the states. You have to regulate this, which is unfortunate because uh, if Illinois bans ghost guns and Indiana doesn't, then you can go to Indiana and still buy ghost guns. It would still be illegal for you to have that in Illinois, but you can still do it. So how many states regulate guns? There were 9. And these are, I don't know if you can read these little dots, but I added this little thing. So when Illinois passed our ghost gun ban, it became 10 states are regulating ghost guns. So this is how a ghost gun starts. You buy what looks like they call this a frame or receiver. This is obviously a pistol. This is the action for a rifle. This is the action for a revolver. When I first started looking into ghost guns, I thought they were all handguns. I was mistaken. These are assault weapons that people are buying parts to and putting together their own assault weapons in their home. Nobody knows they have them. Now this picture was from San Francisco. They've become more pervasive throughout the United States. So this is something that if you see something, say something. I'm going to relate something that just happened here at my local high school last Friday morning. As the kids were arriving to school, one of the kids brought a pistol, turned out to be a pellet gun, but nobody knew that, brought a pistol to the school. Another student saw it, told the administration. They got the school resource officer. They went into lockdown, and I was just in a meeting this morning with the school superintendent. He said within 4 minutes, the school resource officer had the offender in custody. So it's important, if you see something, you have to tell the kids. If you see something, say something. So this happened in Kansas not too long ago. In March of this year, a student brought a ghost gun to school. Another student saw it, got the administration involved. The school's officer went to apprehend the kid with the gun. The student with the gun shot the resource officer and shot an administrator who was trying to help. The school resource officer drew his weapon and then shot the offender. Didn't kill him, but caused severe injury. So here's the 2 officers. This was the administrator on the left and the officer who got shot. Both of them were out of the hospital within a couple of days. The student who was shot was in the hospital for quite some time. So this is from from Journal of Adolescent Health. What they're saying here is the fact that you have a school resource officer is not going to limit or lessen the severity of school shooting. But if, like what happened at my local high school last Friday, if somebody can say something and get that under control before the offender starts to shoot, you can do something about it. Once the shooting starts, that resource officer is you can imagine is going to risk their life trying to do something about it. Plus, you start shooting in schools. Most of the walls are cement block. They ricochet. The bullets ricochet, and you could be putting the kids in danger, being wounded by a ricochet. Assault weapons and mass shootings. Obviously, most of the gun deaths in the U.S. are from handguns, but mass shootings, the AR-15, AK-47 are the weapons of choice. Recent ruling in California law to ban assault weapons was blocked by a federal appeals court. It was appealed since the overturn of the ban did not stand. The law was reinstated. The plaintiff will probably request the Supreme Court take the case. This is a strategy, as I said before, to get these gun issues to the Supreme Court. They now have a Supreme Court that they think will be very friendly to the gun lobby in supporting what the gun lobby wants. So there are over 20 million assault weapons in possession today. This number is actually probably about a year old. So assault weapons are the most popular rifle being purchased today. And this is something that, consider the filibuster as a lethal weapon. The assault weapons ban for the United States was passed in the House either yesterday or today, but they know it's going to struggle if they even gets a vote in the Senate because of the filibuster. So that's what I say. Consider the filibuster as a lethal weapon. It's preventing even common sense gun laws from even having a debate in the Senate. So I wanted to give you and show you something. You've heard about a bump stock. They're now illegal. So I'll explain this real quickly. So here's an AK-47. You remove the stock. This is the bump stock, and you can see there's a gap here. So what happens is there's a spring in here. So when you pull the trigger, there's a recoil. The action part of the weapon recoils into the bump stock, and because of the spring, it's pushed forward. As long as you're holding the trigger down, it fires again. So because this cycles back and forth, you can fire 20 rounds in a second. That's what these weapons are capable of. So they have now figured out how to do the same thing for handguns, especially Glocks. They've invented something called an auto sear, automatic sear. It costs less than $20 online. I'll show you something that online they have a drawing of one is somebody who has a CAD program on their computer and a 3D printer. They can design these and print these themselves. They're coming from China. They can be purchased online, but the shipping paperwork typically has an erroneous description. So these parts are not legal. They can fire 20 rounds or more per second. This YouTube, again, when I send this around, if you want to see these things fire, it's incredible what this will turn a handgun into. It will empty a 20-round magazine in less than 2 seconds. So this little piece can turn almost any gun into a machine gun. It's called an auto sear. They come in many colors, the size of a small piece of Lego. And like I said, it's possible to 3D print a Glock auto sear. They call it a Glock switch. Just remember, having one without a license, even if it's not installed in your gun, can carry a 10-year federal prison sentence. So here's what's available online. This is, if you have a CAD file or CAD program, you can put this, you can design this, and you can 3D print it. Now, remember what this looks like. I'll show you a picture of what this looks like installed in an AR-15 on the next page. So here is an AR-15. Now, bump stocks are illegal, but they can install this inside. So here's that device. Let me back up. See this feature here? Here it is. Here it is installed. And this turns this into a fully automatic weapon. So nobody knows that this weapon is turned into a fully automatic weapon because you cannot see it. A bump stock is visual. You can see it on the outside. So this is, so we had a law or a ban on assault weapons proposed January 28th by Representative Maura Hirschauer. She's a representative from West Chicago. And she was the only sponsor of this bill up until June 6, when Representative Margaret Croak, who is a Chicago representative, she signed on as a sponsor. Two of them were the only sponsors up until July 6. Now, you know what happened on July 4th in Highland Park. By July 27th, 56 more representatives have signed on as sponsors. So now we have 58 sponsors, We need 60 votes in the House to pass. We know there's a couple of representatives, because this is an election year, representatives don't like to commit to doing things with guns because a lot of them feel that that is a problem for them to get reelected. But we know that there are a couple of representatives who support this, but they just won't sign on as a sponsor. There was talk about having a special session, mostly about the abortion right, but we were hoping we could get this. The special session is probably not going to happen. In the veto session, which is going to happen right after our midterm elections, what happens, something to pass in the veto session, it requires a 3/5 majority. So we, instead of just a simple majority, so that's probably not going to happen at that point. So, but we can bring this bill back in the lame duck session, which happens right after the first of the year, before the new legislators are reinstalled. And if that doesn't work, Hirschauer has said she will bring the bill back in the next session next year. So active shooter drills that used to terrify the bejesus out of kids are now banned. They've been banned for over a year, which means they can't do active shooter drills where they run up and down the hall, shooting weapons, banging on doors, terrifying the kids. They can't do that anymore. They can do lockdown drills, but they can't do active shooter drills. So I'll go through this rather quickly. But what they can do is they can do active shooter drills to help the local law enforcement on days when the kids are not present. So that's how they can do an active shooter drill. So there was a question posed to teachers a year or so ago, that if teachers were armed, would you feel safer or less safe? 20% of the teachers said they would feel safer. 22% said about as safe as they are right now. The vast majority, way more than these two together, said less safe. The only ones that were right in this are the 58%. Because if somebody has a gun in the classroom, kids will find it. So where does that person keep the gun? Do they keep it in their pocket? Do they keep it, do they just leave it in their desk drawer? If they're female, do they leave it in their purse? Or do they leave it in their backpack? Kids will find it. So the good news is we don't want school officials, school employees to have guns. So there was a resolution. I don't know what's happened there. There you go. With the Illinois Association of School Boards, IASB, Illinois Association of School Boards, last year had Resolution 2, which was a proposal to support arming of school employees. It failed again last year, which was the 4th year in a row that it failed. But the margin was very close, 181 approved to 202 against. There are over 800 school districts in Illinois. So this isn't even half of the school districts voting. But if only 11 of these districts have changed their vote to approve, only 11, it would have passed. So the new resolution for this year, their meeting is in November. They have no proposal to arm teachers and employees in the resolutions that they're going to be voting on this year. So hopefully we've made an impression. And as I said, teachers, if they have guns, again, my wife is a teacher, and I've talked to several teachers about this. They joke that, my gosh, a teacher with a gun. My wife said, teachers forget where they left their coffee cup. You don't want them to have a gun. So, and this is the problem. In fact, an armed teacher cannot, in a moment of extreme duress and confusion, be expected to transform into a specially trained law enforcement officer. Now remember Uvalde, 14 law enforcement officers with assault weapons would not go into the room where there was one shooter in there. So you can't expect, and they had assault weapons. Now a teacher would have a pistol. A pistol against an assault weapon is no match. And an armed teacher is much more likely to shoot a student or a bystander or be shot by a law enforcement officer. Now, my brother-in-law is a former police officer who has the ability, he has concealed carry because he was an officer. His comment is, if he was ever in a situation like this, or in a mass shooting, like in a theater or wherever, or shopping center, he would never, ever take his gun out and try to shoot the shooter, because law enforcement coming in would see him with a gun and wouldn't know that he was not the shooter. So he goes, there's no way I would do that. So this is something, what we want to stress is keeping guns safe in the homes. Now, I don't know, again, the font is kind of small here, but this is put out by the American Academy of Pediatrics and Healthy Children Organization. They put this out. So hiding a gun is not enough. Kids are curious. They will find the gun, putting the gun on top of the refrigerator, hiding the gun in the nightstand. Hey, kids find their Christmas presents. They're going to find the gun if you know that it's there. Okay. So roughly 1/3 of US homes with kids have guns. 5.4 million kids live in homes with unlocked and loaded guns. Scary statistic when you think that even young toddlers can pull the trigger on an unlocked gun. And you hear about instances where it was not too long ago where a child in a car found a gun in mom's purse and actually then shot the mom in the car. So here's a statistic for school shooters. We'll talk about that for a little bit. So this is data from you can see the period from 1970 to June of 2020. What this does is show school shooters by age. So this red line that I've added here is everything to the left of the red line is 13 years and younger. What we wanted to do is, because the school shooters are in this area here, 18 years and younger. Illinois has a law right now, and the reason I drew the line here, Illinois has a law that says you must lock your gun up and secure it if you think someone under the age of 14 may gain access to it. So that's 13 or younger. That is kind of ridiculous when you see data like this that says under 18 is the vast majority of the school shooters. So safe gun storage, we tried to get this passed under 18. This was the House bill to change the law from under 14 to under 18. It got hung up in committee. It didn't go anywhere. And again, the reason is it's an election year. A lot of legislators are afraid to touch gun legislation. We're trying to do something at the national level. It's called Ethan's Law. This Ethan was in Connecticut. He was at a friend's house. They got a hold of an unsecured gun. Ethan was accidentally shot. And what happened is Connecticut passed what they called Ethan's Law, which requires people in Connecticut to lock up their guns. They have to secure them. So their congressional representative saw this. They brought it to the Congress in DC in March of 2021. But it's in a subcommittee for crime and terrorism ever since. They can't get it out. This is Gabby Giffords on the left. This is Ethan's mom. This is his dad. When they're doing a roll call vote in whether to vote on this in the House. Every time I see this picture, it's just tough. I can't imagine what they go through. So we had a bill that was proposed in Springfield this year to educate gun owners throughout the state. Take 2 years, give it to the Department of Public Health, spend $3.5 million to set up programs to teach them to the need for safe storage. It was assigned to appropriations, but I think it was funded. I haven't been able to go through the entire budget that was passed, but I think it was funded in the budget separately from this bill that was proposed. Okay, so again, this happened in, as you heard, in Michigan. The student that brought a gun to school in his backpack, the administrators called his parents in. They talked about it. They let the child stay in school, despite the fact that kids as young as 6 did not have access to guns. Well, more than half of school shootings would never happen. Now, if you look at the shootings, overwhelming majority of students school shootings are committed by students of that school, either current or former students of that school. So there's no requirement. So what does this child safety lock look like? Lock Act of 2001. It requires that all handguns sold by dealers, they're called FFL, federally firearms licensees, are always required to sell a gun lock, so there's a cable lock. I'll show you what they'll look like in a minute, with every gun sale. When selling and delivering or transferring a handgun to any person other than the licensee, the dealer must provide secure gun storage or safety device to that person for the handgun. However, there's no law that requires that the gun owner use that lock. This was something that was announced earlier this year. It was kind of a total baby step, but okay, their hearts are in the right place. What it was that if you're FFL, federally firearms licensee, that if you sell guns, you have to have available for customers to purchase a safe gun storage device. Doesn't mean they have to buy it. All it says is you have to have it available for sale. So it can be a safe, a gun case, lockbox, and that kind of thing. That's what it means. For the full text of the rule, I've got it here if you want to look it up. But this is so what we got earlier this year. We got this gun bill passed. The first time in I don't know how many years. It's like over 20 years. We got a bipartisan gun bill through the U.S. Congress. Both House and Senate passed this bill. $700 million to help states implement and run crisis intervention program, closing the so-called boyfriend loophole. What that means is, I'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about the firearms restraining order. But the good news is this was a start. It's a start. It's a start. Okay, why do we need a national gun law regarding safe gun storage? Well, you can see all the dark areas here. They don't require safe gun storage. Interestingly enough, Texas, Florida require safe gun storage. More than 2 million students nationwide now attend schools with secure firearm storage awareness policy. One of the bills that we tried to get passed this year, and this is what we tried to get passed, there's no better way to reach parents than through the schools. So we had this gun safe storage campaign that was approved by every town, passed through both chambers, and it was signed into law. What this is the direction to the Department of Public Health to develop that program that I mentioned, that we were trying to get an appropriation of $3.5 million to fund. So this was passed. Department of Public Health now has direction to develop this campaign. Gun safety info what we wanted to do is include in the high school handbook, a statement that said, and require this to be in the handbook, that says, for parents, if you have a firearm, you should lock it up, unloaded, okay? Unfortunately, that got amended. Again, remember, this is a election year, so it got watered down, it got passed, but what got passed was, if you have a program, a safety program in your school, you may talk about safe gun storage. So think about that. If you have a safety program, you may. So two questionable steps that you have to go through. Ban ghost guns, that got passed. That's a great step. And then the firearms, child protect, this is safe storage. This is what we wanted to amend that up to 18. Like I said before, that got stuck in the rules committee. Firearm Safety Act, we wanted to amend the Consumer Product Safety Act to remove the exclusion of pistols, revolvers. That's it. So this is a federal law. I will talk about what she's in the next slide. We'll talk about what we're doing here. There's a group. It's called Project Child Safe. It's sponsored by the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Now, they are generally, they're kind of like the National Rifle Association, only not as vocal. But they have this great program where they give out free gun locks, but they'll only give them out to the local police department. You can call your police department and ask them if they are participating in this. Or you can go to Project Child Safe, look up your local police department and see if they're listed as a distributor of gun locks through this Child Safe program. If they're not, you can call your police department, ask them to participate. It doesn't cost them anything. Project Child Safe will send the gun locks to them for free. All they have to do is tell people they have them available. So send out these free safety kits to communities across. So ask your police department if they distribute these gun locks. You can check here at Project Child Safe. Okay, see if, like I said, if your hometown is listed. If not, contact your police department. See if you can get them involved to do this. So this is what a cable lock looks like. Looks like a bike lock, basically. And it just goes through the gun to prevent, in this case, from the magazine being inserted. This from the mechanism working, same thing for the mechanism working here. This is a biometric lock that is put on. Then this whole device would be removed if the proper person puts the fingerprint on here. The trouble, cable locks can be defeated with a cutting tool. So if you have a cable lock, so what's recommended is either something like this or a gun safe. Now this is a biometric gun safe. I got this from Walmart last year, so the price is probably up. But last year it was $62. So if you can afford a gun, you should be able to afford a gun safe. Smart guns, these are starting to gain some traction. Again, they've been around for quite a while, but so smart guns developer and the NRA say they oppose the regulation of smart guns, but 48% of the public backs regulation of legalization of these weapons. So something that is going to take a long time, but it's something that we can carry on and to get done. So the study shows that officer-involved shootings increase in states where they have no requirement for a concealed carry. The thinking is that police, when they're confronting someone, see something in their hand, they think that that's a gun because they have no way of knowing. The police shootings increased by almost 13% in states that had unregulated concealed carry. 25 states do not require civilians to have a permit. 17 states require local law enforcement to issue civilians. In Illinois, in order to get a concealed carry permit, you have to fill out a form, supply your fingerprints, and send that to the state police, and they will review your fingerprints to make sure that you're not a felon or somebody who is not allowed to have a firearm. So I love this slide. If universal background checks and red flag laws create an insurmountable barrier to you owning a firearm, then you are the person we are worried about. Okay. PBS News did a survey. They asked every senator what action should be taken on guns. Here's what one senator said, Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee. Now this is, I've broken this quote up into several sections so we can talk about each thought individually. She said, we must take meaningful steps to protect our children. That begins with enhancing physical security at schools. Okay, that's a nice statement. Okay, there's already $100 billion sitting in elementary and secondary school relief fund that can be used for this purpose. And funding for school resource officers. We have to figure out a way to keep kids from getting guns in the first place. So, you know, what we don't want to do is turn schools into prison-like systems with metal detectors and things like that they have to come through. Again, I had the discussion, I participated in the discussion just this morning with our school superintendent, and he's kind of dead set against metal detectors because he's seen it other schools who tried to implement that, and it's basically a disaster. For example, our high school has 2,400 kids. Can you imagine trying to get 2,400 kids through a metal detector? And the other thing is, when there's metal detectors, the first person that's shot is the person running the metal detector. Okay, and what they're saying is they want to just allow people with prior military or law enforcement should be allowed to carry firearms in schools. That's not. I was in the military. I don't consider myself someone who should have a gun and in the schools. First of all, I would never own a gun, but this statement is kind of nonsense. So we'll keep going. This is the gun shows. This is in Indiana. Gun shows tend to be very open, but they did a sting on a gun show in Crown Point, Indiana. The owner of the company that puts on the gun shows says he was unaware of the undercover police operation, but had no problem with it because he's trying to run a legitimate gun show. So the Crown Point, Indiana gun shows, which have been held for decades, okay, so now they have a requirement, and they're going to try to enforce background checks. Everybody criticizes, you know, Indiana as supplying a lot of guns to Illinois. Crime guns recovered this in 2020. Again, I couldn't find data any more recent than this. But Illinois gun dealers supply the vast majority of crime guns recovered in Illinois. Most of these are in Chicago, but it's also Danville, Rockford, Champaign, Urbana, and you know, East St. Louis, those areas. But we know Indiana is a major source. However, we can't do anything about Indiana. We can't control what goes on in Indiana. If 37% of crime guns recovered from Illinois are coming from Illinois gun dealers, and only 12% are coming from Indiana. Well, when I was in manufacturing, when we had a problem on the manufacturing line, we didn't try to solve the smallest contributor to our rejects. We tried to solve the major defect, the major contributor to defects, which is our 37%. So we can control gun dealers in Illinois. We can't do anything about out-of-state dealers. This is where major cities for crime guns from 2020. So you can see, and this just all crime guns, doesn't say where they're coming from. Okay, this is the issue about suing a gun manufacturer. Um, there's a law, and the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, and it's referred to as the PLACA law. You can't sue a gun manufacturer for any injury or death caused by their product. It's the only consumer product in America where the manufacturer is not responsible for death or injury caused by their product, because the whole purpose of their product is to cause death and injury. So recent order cuts, out of court settlements, you may have heard about this. 9 Sandy Hook families changed this. They sued Remington for deceptive marketing. Remington was on their assault weapons was marketing, buy an assault weapon, reclaim your man card. So they were trying to make it seem like you become a bigger man if you have an assault weapon, and they won the suit. I forget how many millions of dollars that these 9 families got, but New Jersey, other states are trying to do the same thing. Just for example, yard darts were outlawed in December 1988 after 3 deaths. So we can't take action if we want to. Gun violence against women. This is important to families across the United States. Abusers with firearms are 5 times more likely to kill their victims, and guns exacerbate the power and control used by abusers to inflict emotional abuse and exert coercive force over their victims. Every month, 57 women are shot and killed by an intimate partner. 57. Now, these guys probably shouldn't have had a gun in the first place. Nearly 1 million women are alive today, report being shot or shot at by an intimate partner, and 4.5 million women have reported being threatened with a gun by an intimate partner. So the extreme risks. So we call ours in Illinois a firearms restraining order, FRO, or we call it FRO. Other states call them extreme risk protection orders. So you'll hear ERPO, FRO used interchangeably. Started in Connecticut in 1999. In 2018, Illinois got our FRO law passed. We found out that it was incomplete, and we made some changes to it thanks to Denise Stunback, who got a law passed last year to update some of the holes that we left in that FRO law that we got passed. So the U.S. Congress reinstated the Violence Against Women's Act. This is in March of this year. This is again another milestone on victory for gun safety. Okay, so this is good news. So the interesting thing, it was done through a reconciliation of a budget act. So it was put in the Consolidated Appropriations Act for 2022. Here's the fact sheet on it. Again, you guys, I'll send this out. You guys can check these out. So two recommended actions from every town for gun laws: strengthen the state laws prohibiting domestic abusers from possessing guns. So this is our FRO law. We have this, and I'll talk about what was and what was improved in the law that was passed last year. Illinois has the firearms restraining order, passed in 2018. In 2021, we enacted an update to it, which you can find out more information about this at a website called Speak for Safety Illinois, speakforsafetyil.org. Firearms restraining order. What happens initially was the wording said you can only get one of these firearms restraining orders if you were in an immediate family member. So the problem was a couple As a child, they were never married. They never lived together. Is that a family? But he starts threatening the mother of their child. And so what the update was last year was these they are now considered a family or it changed to common parents. We can now confiscate ammunition and gun parts where the law before would not allow law enforcement to do that. Oh, I skipped this first line here. A firearms restraining order is different from an order of protection. Both may be needed. So order of protection basically just says you have to stay away from the person who's concerned. Firearm restraining order allows law enforcement to go in and confiscate the weapons that person has. So we'll go through this real quickly. There are two types of froze. One is emergency that lasts 2 weeks, and you can then go back get a 6 month. Now this is not just for people that feel threatened, but if you feel somebody is a threat to themselves, you can get a firearms restraining order so they won't hurt themselves. They won't commit suicide. I try to check local police websites to see if there's information on how to obtain a firearms restraining order. The only place that I was able to find it is on the Cook County Sheriff's Office, their website. I have checked websites, Lake County, DuPage, Champaign, all over. I cannot find anything on. I tried to check your police department website. I could not find anything on your website about how to obtain a firearms restraining order. Keep in mind, when somebody needs a firearms restraining order, they need it now. You don't want to have them have to go looking for how do I do this, because they need it now. So this is just how to do it in Cook County. This is a video on gun myths. Again, when I send this to you guys, you can click on these links. This is somebody talking about their fourth grader has questions about guns, and this guy's he's talking about his friend's suicide. The hardest thing he ever did, he said, was take a shower. After his friend's suicide, he stayed in his room for weeks, and somebody finally convinced him, just take a shower. He said it was the hardest thing he had to do in his life. But watch these videos. These things are gut wrenching when you watch them. Some links to the Joyce Foundation studies. Now, does this make sense? Permit not required for, you need a FOID card, but other than that, you can buy as many of these. If you want to go fishing, you need a permit every year. Got to buy a separate permit every year. The FOID card costs $10 for 10 years, $1 a year, and they protest the cost of FOID cards. So, in conclusion, my request: schedule a gun violence presentation for your organization. If you have a church organization, if you have a civic organization, I'd be glad to do a gun violence presentation for anybody. You can, but make sure people vote. Here's some websites that you can go to find out who supports common sense gun laws. Be sure to have gun questions prepared at candidate forums. Ask them if they support the assault weapons ban bill. Request your vote by mail ballot today. If you think, this is one thing that I suggest, because I work on this vote by mail task force, and I canvass, and I tell people, just think about it, how if you want to wait till the last day to vote and something comes up, you may not be able to vote. But if you have a vote by mail ballot, if you find you can't go to the polls on that day in Illinois, you still have 2 weeks for that ballot to be received at your county clerk's office and still be counted. If you have a local moms demand group, schedule a Be Smart gun safety presentation. It's only about 20 minutes. Ask your members to join the League of Women GVP Google group. I use it to send informational emails, but more importantly, I use it to send alerts for witness slips. It's because the legislature is not in session now. They won't be back until I think it's after the election. And witness slips happen only when something is being considered in a committee. And basically what they do is if they get a lot of people commenting on a specific proposal, then they think it's important. They may vote to send it to the floor for a full vote. If they're only getting a couple people voting on it, they're probably not going to waste their time moving it to the floor. So this is a league term or time for action. TFA can take weeks for approval and distribution. So we generally, for witness slips, have less than 24 hours. So that's why I like this Google group. But if you want to join this Google group, if you're not already a part of it, you can send, this is my email address, stan.or.jim@aol.com. Hopefully is something you can remember, but just put GVP Google group as a subject so I can find it. We will add you to the Google group. Don't expect something anytime in the near future until the legislature is back in session. So I appreciate your time. Thanks for spending your Thursday night with me. I appreciate that. And if there's questions in the chat, tell you what, I'm going to stop sharing. I did. And we'll go to see if we can go to the chat. Oh, get that out of there. So are there any questions in, I don't see any questions in the chat. So I answered everybody's question.
Well, some of us might be challenged by technology.
Okay, I'm open to verbal questions.
I have a comment. You said that Illinois has real strict gun laws, and yet we're high up in the percentage of homicides. Doesn't make sense, does it? It doesn't make sense.
Well,
so gun laws, do they work? They must not work very well.
Well, obviously you have to enforce them to make them work. And we are, a lot of this comes down to funding of local police, funding of the state police. Up until a couple of years ago, for example, in 2018, we got a bill passed that allowed the Illinois State Police to regulate Illinois gun dealers. Up until that law was passed, we could only, we had to depend on the ATF, the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, to inspect and regulate gun dealers, except they had been underfunded for the last 25 years and they didn't have enough people. So they could only visit gun dealers about once every 8 to 10 years. And if there was an infraction, it took them another year or two to get back to see if that had been corrected. So we got the law passed to allow the state police to do the inspections. However, it took the state police 2 years to come up with how they were going to implement that. So it's just starting this year that we're regulating gun dealers. Now, one of the things that I have been thinking about doing is filing a FOIA request, the Freedom of Information Act, and asking the state police, how many gun dealers have you inspected? How many gun dealers have had infractions? How many gun dealers have you traced crime guns back to? That kind of thing. So I'm going to probably wait another month and then file it, because I want something for as many months in this year as I can get. But that's part of the issue. And another example is when somebody's FOID card has been revoked, what the state police were doing was literally writing them a letter saying, your FOID card is revoked. Please turn in your FOID card and your gun. And that's it. And no follow-up, nothing. In my hometown of like 10,000 people, we had about, I think it was 20 or 30 people with revoked FOID cards in our town that still had their weapons in our small town. So the state police now have to, part of the legislation that we got passed last year The state police now have to follow up on that. They have to go and get the gun from, if your FOID card is revoked, they have to go recover the firearm. So, a lot of this has been, we have laws on the books, but we don't force the implementation, the actual enforcement of the law.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
Good answer.
Jim, we've got a question in the chat from Ann Masters as to how many gun dealers there are in the state. She thought she heard you say 5,000. Is that right? Or
There are more gun dealers than McDonald's.
Hmm.
And so I was talking with some people in the neighboring town a year or so ago, and the time was Palatine. And I said, you guys know you have like 12 gun dealers. And they're like, no, we don't. Well, many of the gun dealers work out of their house or their apartment. They don't have a sign out in front, but they're gun dealers. So the only ones that they're aware of are the ones that have a storefront. But we have, so like I said, I can just relate, and I don't know the exact number, but we have more gun dealers than we have McDonald's. Yeah, Joanne has a question.
Yes, has there any attempt, or I don't know which one, to address the problem through ammunition, like refusing to sell bullets, etc., or taxing them out of the world or something? I don't know. I'm just asking.
No, that is a great idea that has been discussed. We need to find a legislator that will propose that. So we'll be working on stuff like that now. I think it makes sense to me, but the gun lobby is so powerful that, I mean, to me, it would make sense to tax it. So we can get money to fund some of these programs. Let's tax ammunition, let's tax gun sales, put that money back into Department of Public Health or the state police so they can hire people and enforce these laws. But I mean, it's a lot of that comes back down to money. Can we do we want to give money to the state police to implement these laws, or spend the money someplace else? And then that's unfortunate. So, but that's what we're faced with. But Joanne, I agree with you. That's a great idea.
it would make a lot of sense to me to somehow regulate or tax ammunition, because there's no way with 3D printers, et cetera, you're going to stop people from making their own guns. But a gun is not really dangerous, not that bad if you've got one bullet. It's really dangerous if you've got 1,200 magazines of,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had the company I worked for. We had international locations, and we had one of the fellows from Japan come over here and work for 3 years, and he was interested in. He ended up going to the shooting range, buying a shotgun, shooting the skeet and clay pigeons and stuff. He bought a gun. He wanted to bring it back to Japan. He could not send it to his house. He had to send it to a gun range. The gun range holds his gun. He can only shoot the gun at the gun range. And when he goes there, for example, if he buys 50 cartridges, when he checks his gun back in, he has to turn in a total of 50 spent cartridges or unspent. He cannot take any of that ammunition home. So why does Japan have only less than 10 guns per year? There you go. This thing about what drives me nuts is the gun lobby saying it's our God-given right to do this.
Yeah.
Well, God was not there when the Constitution and the Bill of Rights were being written. So, and the other thing I hear, it's our constitutional right. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you can have a handgun. So,
And Jim, I'd like to add that your action alerts are really, really effective requests for witness slips. When we get one of those, sometimes I'll go look up the bill to add a little context and then send out an alert to all members. And we have quite a few members who will then go out and fill out witness slips right away. So that's been really effective.
Well, that's great. That is so important. That is one thing that we can do to counter the gun lobby, because they are very good at, and you've seen that, they're very good at getting, and they respond like right now. So I appreciate the help when you guys do that. That's really great.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. No?
Well, thanks for scheduling me tonight, and thanks for letting me to spend your Thursday night with you.
Well, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate all the data that you threw out
Yeah.
at this. It was
Yeah.
pretty eye-opening. I'm going to go back and
Right.
re-listen to this a couple times.
Yeah, so Rebecca, I'll send you the presentation. I'll send you
Okay.
in PowerPoint. So
Great.
all those links will
Oh,
work. It's the only way that the links will work if I send it in PowerPoint.
Great.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel stuffed with information.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
Very
drinking out of a
interesting.
fire hose. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
Yeah. Sylvia, did you have a comment?
Oh, I was just going to ask what's the most positive thing he's seen happen? Just
the most
end it on a positive note.
the most positive thing is I think we are going to get an assault weapons ban passed, if not this year, next year. We've got, I think we've got the votes in both houses to get it done. It's just because it's an election year, people are, the legislators are reluctant to commit. But the feedback that I'm getting from legislators is it will happen. It will happen. And that would be awesome if we can ban assault weapons. Here's what happens. So there's another presentation that I work with another partner on. And one of the examples that we use is as states start to pass laws, once there's enough states that are passing laws, like for example, same-sex marriage was not popular until, states started passing, and all of a sudden the federal government passes a law. It's things like that. So if we can start getting states to pass these laws, we can get the attention of Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you,
informative.
for spending, some of your Thursday evening with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This is what I do. This is so important to me to do this kind of stuff.
That's right.
So thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay,
Right.
I'll drop
Good
off.
night.
See you guys.
All right.
Bye. Thank you.